What's going on, everybody? I'm bundled up because I'm trying to do a show outside so I don't wake up my family. We've got a little house here we rented, so didn't want to wake anybody up. So I'm working from out here, getting Rohde together. Looks like he's putting it together. Sheets is popping on in now. How's it going, Sheets?
Oh, it's winter again?
It's just cold in the morning. It's like 48 degrees, so bundled up. Try not to wake up the family. We rented a house for the weekend, so it's this is why I'm bundled up today. How are you doing out there?
It's beautiful here. Actually, it's a little chilly, but
You guys are used to it. You're
it's
not
gonna
wimps
be,
like us in California.
yeah. Just gonna be
How
hanging
about
out, watching the games, having some people come over today. Actually,
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
yep.
It's a weird slate, huh?
Well, I mean, it's a one-game slate, right? It's a two-game slate, and then and then you're not supposed to just play all of it, but it's hard not to. And then you have Tony Pollard, who's like going to be 1,000,000% owned. It's hard not to play him too, So it's like you fast forward to the end of the day, you know that the Miami stack with Tony Pollard is not winning the Millie, but yet we're playing it anyway. It's like it's so bizarre in a way. It's like you
Yeah.
just don't know exactly what's going to come in, but it just can't be that because it's just too easy. So it's
Right.
we'll figure it out. We'll see what's going on.
How you doing today, Rody? What are your thoughts on this slate over here? It's a weird one, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's tough to build some lineups. I think we might have to use the term lock, like your favorite term, Bobby. With the
This
foul.
this this is more of the day where I could see that actually be like I am just actually clicking away from Tony Pollard is becoming physically difficult for me. It's like my computer won't even let me do it. But I'm forcing it out in a couple spots. But again, it's like I mean I've got like 80+% right now. It's pretty ridiculous. And there are plenty of other guys we could look to, but I mean, this is what we want. Tony Pollard with the backfield to himself against the Bears. It feels like a pretty good spot. It's hard to even see a way he doesn't get there without an injury or somehow like I guess maybe the Dak pressing the Dak passing game is an option to get away from it, but it's just I don't know. I can't find myself that happy with it. I do have a few interesting takes, and we'll get into plays and everything like that. You guys want to start with stacks, or do you want to start going position by position? Because
Whatever
I
you
think,
want.
all right, well, I think we could start off with the game stacks because we have such an obvious one with the Miami Detroit situation. Like Sheet said, how do we get away from what is going to be so crazy high owned? I've got some other ones that in there, but I mean, again, I'm having a hard time not paying up for either Tyreek or Waddle in a lot of my lineups. But that seems to be the obvious one. I think that Vegas, New Orleans, you're going to have a couple chalky pieces in there, but I think that that's actually you could find a way to stack that game that I think is reasonable. They're mostly going to be high owned, the obvious plays. And I'm curious to get everybody's take on the Ellinger situation because I'm probably going to do more of it. That's going to be my highest owned quarterback. I understand that it seems fishy and it's 4K and they're going to try to run the ball. I kind of like the idea of playing Ellinger with Taylor. Taylor. People forget this. He had 7 receptions last week. I like playing him with Taylor and Campbell or Pittman solo or Campbell solo. I don't mind if you want to take a shot on any of the tight ends because it's kind of a weak tight end week. But I don't know, man. I'm struggling a little bit. And then the other game that maybe is getting a little bit lower ownership considering some of the we were used to seeing all the Seattle games be the nuts. And again, we have, this time we don't have many people on the Seattle New York game. I think the Minnesota Arizona game is kind of interesting, but I would prefer not playing Cousins and playing Kyler Murray instead as a spend up that no one's going to play off of Jalen Hurts and who's going to have some ownership. That's the other one I've got. And yeah, and then the other my get weird one is to play at least one of the Pittsburgh receivers with Pickett and then using one of the Philly receivers as a run back, whether it be Goddard, Brown, or Smith. But it's a rough day out here. So what are you guys doing? I'll start with you, Sheets, and we'll talk about some of the stacks that you like, and then move over to Rody.
Okay, so aside from Minnesota, which is pretty obvious, then the next one I have is Minnesota, as you mentioned. They're showing up really, really well, and paying up for Jefferson is kind of difficult, but you can do it. And if you don't feel like doing it, you could play Thielen and Smith, Irv Smith, that is. And but quite honestly, I again, we haven't talked about this at all before this. I'm actually playing one entry in the bigger one in like the Wildcat today, and I'm actually currently on the Kyler Murray side in that one lineup. Actually,
Okay.
yeah, I really like that. I like first of all, I think DeAndre Hopkins is a freaking lock. Okay, and you know, I say that lovingly, right? Just that word, but you know, I like Kyler Murray with Hopkins, and like you said, he's pretty expensive, Kyler Murray. I don't think he's going to be owned at all. If anybody plays that game, they're going to play the Cousins side, and if anybody wants to play up for quarterback, they're going to pay for Hurts, like you just said, right? So I really like that, and just to stay with the Arizona side for just a second. I would go back to Rondale Moore. He didn't get much action last week, except he was on the field for 90% of snaps. So that's really all you want, you know. And considering how you know how these plays tend to break down when Kyler Murray is out there, it's very possible that things could just change this week, and maybe Rondale Moore gets some more actual targets. But Minnesota is my next highest owned stack below Miami. And then you mentioned New Orleans. You know, New Orleans is a very frustrating stack to play because of the Taysom Hill effect.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have some of that. And you know, the other team that I talked about in my early look this week, that's not, I mean, it's not that I have that much of them, that I have enough that I'm going to be rooting, is as gross as this is, I'm going to have some Atlanta stacks. And I don't know why. Part of it is because it's such an easy run back with DJ Moore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I kind of like that as a low owned option as well. So for me, it's Miami at the top, then Minnesota would be my obvious pivot. But I think Arizona on the other side can be cool. And then I mentioned the Saints in Atlanta, and I hope somebody talks about it. If you're gonna play the Miami side, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to flip it around and play some Detroit on the other side as the main stack as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much all my thoughts with regard to actual stacks.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. And I just want to throw out why I like the Kyler side of it, because I see that Minnesota thing. I think that Kirk Cousins is a complete sucker play today. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in football, and over the past 8 years, when it comes to dealing with pressure. Arizona blitzes more than any team in the NFL. And I actually think Arizona is the number one spend down defense on the slate, even in a game that's going to be a shootout. I'm not saying they won't score points, but I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities to get some picks and some big play defensive opportunities and some sacks and whatnot, because Cousins is so bad against pressure against a team that just blitzes all the time. So let's move over to Rohde. Rohde, what stacks do you have? You can if it's the same ones, you can sort of echo what your thoughts are on them, and then if you have any other ones, please let us know, because we're looking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have to talk here today after what you guys just said. Yeah, I like everything you guys said. Yeah, the Arizona-Minnesota game, I'm definitely going to have Arizona in one of my bigger lineups. I don't know if it's going to be FanDuel side or DK side, but I do like that Arizona game. I'm getting to a lot of Hopkins popping. I really like what she said about that Atlanta stack, Mariota. I'm getting a lot of that type of stuff too. That game's popping a little bit. I am trying to force in a little bit of that Hurts and Goddard stack. I do like that combo. You know, I do like AJ Brown or Devontae Smith today. He's pretty cheap, but like you can just go with the tight end, hope that he gets the work, and then maybe Smith and Brown kind of like get a little bit of work, but like not like winning upside. So yeah, and then I like that Vegas New Orleans game that you guys also talked about too. So actually, with talking about all those games, I'm kind of getting off the Miami Detroit game a little bit more with these other games I like. And the other game I'm trying to get to more Dallas stack. I'm gonna try to get a Dallas stack in there too. I haven't figured it out yet, but I like CD a little bit lower owned in that game.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw out, we just had news that Darren Waller is officially inactive, which you had some sites that projecting him for out, some sites projecting him for a reasonable game. So I don't think you're going to see the Foster Moreau chalk that we've seen in the past. And he's another one of those cheap tight ends. We'll get into the positions in a minute, but there's a number of cheap tight ends today to consider, and I would include him now in your pool, even though the matchup against the Saints, just ever since I've basically played DFS, has been a nightmare for tight ends. But Foster Moreau should be in that mix with it being a good game, and 3,100 is obviously a really reasonable price. get off some of the Noah Fant, who's also, we got some suspect stuff there, but he's got upside. And then you've got the Irv Smith, I think, are going to be pretty popular. All right, let's go to positions, and it's going to mostly, correlate with stacks as far as the quarterback goes. But Rohde, I'll start with you on this one. Where do you stand on Ellinger, and where do you stand on these other? Tua is going to be just I think really, really highly owned. Should have significantly higher ownership than everybody else. And I think those are going to be pretty much your main chalk quarterbacks. I think a lot of people are going to play Cousins as well. Well, a lot meaning close to 10%. I kind of like Sheets' idea about the Mariota thing, just because you have Drake London and Pitts so cheap. That's really sort of that stack. But it's hard to see a lot of guys on this slate outside of either Murray or Hurts having like the real 35 plus upside. And even those guys are a little bit thin at that. So I don't mind spending down for quarterbacks here. But you could even one other guy I'll throw out just to get your thoughts on is Jared Goff and Goff, Willis, and Pickett. Willis for Houston can really run, and obviously we like that in quarterbacks. It's weird to play him in this spot against a team that slows the game down and whatnot. I'm sorry, not for Houston, for Tennessee. I don't know why in the same game though. But Willis can run, and if a lot of people are going to play Ellinger, I think just some of these other cheapos are worth considering. So what are you doing at quarterback, and what are your thoughts on Ellinger and Tua, especially Cousins as well?
Yeah, I really like the Ellinger play today. I'm going to have a bunch of stacks with him in it today. I think I'm going to go lighter on Tua a little bit. I might put him in a bigger lineup just because I only have a little bit of him. Just hopefully I hit that Waddle Hill stack, basically. Yeah, and the Mariota one I like because, London, Pitts, and then run it back with DJ Moore. I like that game. I don't like the Houston one as much because I'm going to do a lot of Dameon Pierce. I like him. He's getting a lot of work in that game. And Cousins, I got a little bit of it. Like Adam Thielen and Irv to get a little different, and then sprinkling some Justin Jefferson and some other lineups today. But I'm probably going to get the Murray stack in a bigger buy-in. So with Hopkins I'm getting a lot of Hopkins.
Yeah, and it's funny because you could run you mentioned Pierce, and I just think that there's like an opportunity there for that game to, I really like Henry today, but if you're not going to go that route, because you have a quarterback that can run a little bit, I wish I could pair him with somebody. That's the problem I'm having for the other side of it. But I do like the idea of taking a shot here with this Willis, just because I know he can move. But anyway, just throwing that one as a get weird play out there. Sheets, how about you for quarterbacks? I know you talked about a number of them already, but some guys overweight, underweight. I think you're going to have some Mariota based on what you said. Where do you stand with guys like, the guys we mentioned, but also, Derek Carr, Geno Smith, Jared Goff? There's just a lot of guys here who I feel like have some upside, and they're not really getting owned very much. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, me, I don't play guys like Ellinger. That's just not my. That's just not my thing.
How do you know what a guy like Ellinger is?
A guy that's 4K that just is not going to throw the ball out. I just don't like playing the running quarterbacks. I just don't do it.
He's not a running quarterback though.
He's a nothing quarter. I mean, he's a backup freaking rookie quarter. I just don't play guys like that. I don't know. Maybe that's terrible. But and I guess if I played cash, I would take the 4K so I could put the other guys in. But I'm not. I don't. I think I'll have zero. That's just you asked. So as you mentioned, I mean, the majority of my quarterbacks are correlated to my stack. So Tua, Cousins, Kyler Murray on the Arizona side. Some Derek Carr or whatever, but it's unfortunately, these Miami guys project so well. I just have difficulty getting away from it. And yes, you're right. He's going to be pretty popular. Just kind of hoping I could do some different stuff. So we didn't really talk too much about that with respect to the stacks. I mean, one of the things you could do if you want to play the Miami is you could play Gesicki like without Hill, for example. Or Gesicki without Waddle or something like that. That'll be a little more popular, I guess. But Gesicki you could use, and there's ways that we didn't talk about this, I guess, enough. I guess we'll talk about when you get to running backs. Like how do you incorporate Mostert within your Miami stacks? Do you prefer him as like kind of a one-off? I guess we'll wait to running back to get there. But as far as quarterbacks go, I mean, Tua will be my highest owned guy. That's pretty much
and it's interesting because to answer that for me is I do like the Detroit side of this as well. We've seen Miami give up some big games, and I don't see why we wouldn't include I don't know, a little bit of the I don't know, the Mostert with the in the Goff stacks. You know what I mean?
You know what? I'm going to say this, by the way, and after I say this, I'm going to go back. I'm going to trim my Miami exposure, and this is why. Okay, I'll just a couple of stupid football observations. Okay, so I was watching that Miami game last week. Okay, with intent. I had Miami in Survivor against Pittsburgh, and for the first possession of the game, okay, they were just like a machine. Okay, just an absolute machine. And then the rest of the game, they honestly did nothing. I mean, literally, they did nothing. So I am, and I got a heart attack every time Tua threw one of those dumb Tua timing patterns with like no pace on it. Okay, like sometimes it got there. Half the time I'm worried. Pittsburgh dropped like 2 interceptions that probably would have made him a huge favorite in that game. I particularly was not particularly impressed with Miami offense in that game against Pittsburgh. The other thing I would say, again, not even a football observation, but it was we're only a week removed or so from Dallas being like incredible smash play because Detroit can't stop anybody, and Dallas couldn't get much going either. You know, so as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, like Michael Gallup had literally 0 fantasy points in that game. And CeeDee Lamb had like 6 or something like that. So I'm not completely convinced that this is. I mean, listen, according to the numbers, and I guess in the context of the slate, it's kind of tough to fade. But just like it's one of those things that if it fails, you're not really allowed to complain because you saw this happen, and I'm going to be really upset if I don't. I am actually going to fade a little more in this.
Yeah, interesting. For what it's worth, one other guy I just want to throw out as a quarterback that I don't think I'm using, but I think that we're probably going to want to look at more. And everybody who just talks about how much he sucks because he's 21 years old, it's a big pet peeve of mine. People say that stuff like that. But I think that Justin Fields is going to have some games going forward, especially if you like Dallas to go ahead and take that one over. It's hard always to find a pairing, but Mooney is only 4,800, and we know his upside. You get one big play out of Mooney, and then a bunch of things out of Fields. I don't think that's the worst idea in the world to maybe get in your lot in the millionaire maker to take some shots with that. I also, for what it's worth, I think the Bears are very, very live in that game. I know that sounds weird, but anytime you have a defense that really, really pursues against a quarterback with incredible scramble ability, I think that there's always some upside for them to escape. It's like the opposite of the Kirk Cousins point I was making about the Arizona D attacking him. I like quarterbacks that are going to, when people are going to get after them, that can scramble because it leaves opportunities usually for big rushing plays down the field, and you never know if you get a 60-yarder from Justin Fields or something like that as a rushing touchdown, something like.
Hey, from your mouth to God's ears, because Dallas is going to be like 30% owners in Survivor, and I'll have 0 of that, so I'll be rooting for Chicago.
Well, let's go Chicago. I think that's, and by the way, just as a little odd narrative, undefeated Justin Fields against his draft class so far this season.
Let's go.
So this would be the there's a little bit of good stuff happening in Chicago that's maybe a little better than they actually, than people think. Rohde, let's talk about running backs first. Why don't you go off? Because we're going to have a lot of chalk at running back here. And I actually don't even buy that Pollard will be as low owned as he's projected. I think he's going to be above 50% in the high buy ends. I really do. What are you doing to sort of counter that? Where do you stand, assuming that he was going to be somewhere along those lines? Who else are you using? Do you have any low owned options for us? Because I think that, you're going to see just a whole slew of guys playing in this 6K range, and Josh Jacobs will get the ownership again. I like the idea again of trying to play Henry and Taylor maybe a little bit, but where do you stand with the running back position today?
Yeah, I'm kind of eating some of this chalk. I like the Pierce. I like the Walker. I do like Jacobs. I like Pollard. A little bit of a spend up I'm trying to get to. I think maybe like the Taylor. I like the CMC. I'm a little more worried about Henry now with the backup quarterback. I mean, Henry did get some passing work. He does get a lot of the work, or maybe he just gets all the work today. So, I mean, that might be a good spend up today. I do like the Alvin Kamara play a little bit. Is a little bit more spend up. He's not too bad priced on DK. Barkley on DK, I don't mind a little bit too in that Seattle game and Giants. I think I like the pieces there as not stacking it with QBs this week, but I think I like some of the pieces in there like Wandell, Barkley, and then Kenneth Walker obviously on the other side I'm getting a lot of. And then I'm really tight today on the pool today for running backs. Those are really my guys. I'm just cycling through. So
yeah, no, it's interesting because I have a lot of the chalk as well. I did want to throw out just before I go to sheets. There's a couple of low owned guys that I've got in my lineups. It's a very speculative because he hasn't gotten anywhere near even the reasonable share of the work so far. But I believe in the talent, and I think Detroit kind of wants to win a football game at some point. I think DeAndre Swift actually is an interesting large field tournament play, and actually maybe not even just large field. I think that there's a guy who has the ability physically to put up the biggest score on the slate. I just don't know how much of the work he's going to get. I just am a huge Swift fan in general, and I just don't think anybody's playing him. I also think another way of getting off of some of the Philly chalk, we love that game, right? And maybe Miles Sanders, that feels a little weird at 6,600. But I really like also my favorites. My favorite way of getting a little bit off of it though is playing Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, and it'll be interesting to see in Houston, who can't seem to stop the run against anybody. They're the worst run defense in the NFL against Derrick Henry, even with a backup quarterback. I think it sounds pretty good to me. So I'm interested in Derrick Henry and Taylor specifically as a pairing. Maybe even throw Jacobs in and get different in one lineup. We'll get into some value. I have some home run value wide receivers that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but none of them feel great. Sheets, what are you doing here at running back? And are you mostly on the chalk with it? Is there anybody you have off the board?
I am mostly on the chalk, only because neither of you mentioned it. That doesn't mean you guys didn't look at it. I guess you just thought that it was already mentioned. But just to reiterate, Deontay Foreman's a good play at 5,300 with Hubbard out, and he's going to be highly owned as well. But I like Foreman. Listen, the thing about Foreman is it's that extra 1K that you save actually really helps in a lot of your lineups. What that also means is he's probably going to be a little more higher owned than in other slates maybe. I like Pierce. I like Pollard. The other, pretty much all the guys you mentioned. I guess somebody mentioned Kamara. Somebody mentioned Stevenson. The one guy I'll throw in. Another running back who they just lost their top guy are the Jets. And unless you think that James Robinson is going to be immediately thrown in there, you could do worse by maybe playing Michael Carter at really low ownership. He also has some pass catching upside, and they're really not much of an underdog, maybe like 1.5 point underdog, but whatever. I think that if you want something low owned, maybe you could try that. But running backs for me has been very very bland this year. I've taken my shots with some of these higher priced guys, like with Henry and stuff, and even when they've had good games, it hasn't been good enough. So when you had the 6K guys scoring just as much, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get to what's his name to Jacobs today. That 1K, it's kind of weird when you think about it. For 1K, it just turns him from a 100% owned guy to a no play, right? seems weird, right? But I'm just not getting to him just because of just how the other running backs kind of dominate the board. I'll give you one other guy, and this is going to be that off the board. But we talked about that Minnesota game. You can play Benjamin at 6K. That's not the worst idea in the world. Connor was in fact ruled out. So it's Benjamin was 100% owned a few weeks ago at a similar price. So you could try that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. They did give Keontae Ingram. I mean, he had I believe he had 11 touches last week. That's the one thing that worries me about the Benjamin play. But I think that getting other exposures to those game environments is something we always like to do. It's everybody. It's not games are stacking and fading. Sometimes we want to find the weird piece in that game, and I think that Benjamin fits the bill. I think he's going to have a little bit of ownership for what it's worth, but I don't think by the end of the day, are people really clicking that button over Pollard that often? I just don't see that happening. So
you know what's awesome about Twitter and like football Twitter and DFS Twitter? It's one of the great contrarian indicators of like everything that happens. Like if you like timestamped when like a majority of Twitter says something, it's like amazing. Like I don't think that Russell Wilson has missed a receiver since all of Twitter basically retired him after the first quarter today. Like literally after the first quarter, there was like literally nothing but Russell Wilson, just whatever stuff. I literally don't think he's had an incomplete pass since then. And he's just completely going bananas. trying to bring his team back.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is what Twitter does, man. They react early. You know, they complain about DeAndre Jordan after one quarter, like I tend to do,
Yeah.
right? You're like, don't worry about it, it'll get there, you know, whatever.
They complain. Yeah, they complain about Cade Cunningham getting 5 fantasy points in the first
Yep.
quarter, and then he ends up with 55. You know,
And
what
then
I
they
mean?
disappear, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, we knew he would get it going. I actually felt really good about that the whole time. Like that's just the way that Twitter works, especially in the DFS
Hey,
world.
we got to root for Jacksonville a little bit because I'll tell you, our boy and our man, and you know, you don't know who he is really, but what's
Brave
his name?
Jayhawk. I watched the whole video last night.
Oh, Brave Jayhawk, yeah. So he actually went for it. He played in Circa. He played. He went off of all the chalk and all the favorites and made one entry in Jacksonville and one in Indianapolis. And if you look at the board, there were 100 people. There are 100 people left in Circa. There's literally one entry that took Jacksonville and one that took Indianapolis, both his. So that's I mean, like that's incredible balls, you know what I mean?
And he had the teams left too, right? He's just saving them for
the
next
week. He just saved them, and you know we talked through it and stuff, you know, and so if there is a survivor god, Jacksonville will come back and win this, but Jacksonville was right on the brink of just basically ruin, you know, blowing them out early. There was 7-0 and they had the ball on the 1 yard line, and then it what's his name Lawrence threw an interception in the end zone. And the next thing you know, there was the game again. Anyway, okay, so we're done with running back.
Yeah, we're done with running back. Sheets, why don't you start us off at wide receiver because you said you basically like a virtual lock on Hopkins here. I always say.
Well, I'm just saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, like I say that. And let me just see if I even have any of them. I mean, I'm actually below the field after all that talk. Like I'm like 17% Hopkins, pretty much on DraftKings. I was really focused on my bigger buy-in stuff. So I really wanted to play Kyler Murray, so I talked myself into the fact, I guess, that DeAndre Hopkins is a lot.
I love DeAndre Hopkins today too, for what it's worth.
Okay. So I guess I'll start wide receiver. So wide receiver, my highest owned guy. Boy, this is like a real shock. Is Tyreek Hill. He's a really good football player, and he's against Detroit, and he's in a dome and all that stuff. So I definitely like him. Other guys at wide receiver. Here's another guy who's maybe people have heard of. Amon St. Brown.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you're gonna play Tyreek Hill lineups, playing on St. Brown is not the worst idea in the world. I will also say by the way, that one other way you can get different in there, and this is like, I mean, you could play Josh Reynolds at 0% ownership, I think. Anyway, moving on. Drake London, we mentioned him before. Devontae Adams for the Raiders. Then, oh my God, 12. This is a pretty healthy dose. I have a 12% share of Marquez Callaway, which is definitely leverage, right? And then I also have, you know what else I forgot? That's why I'm looking at these. I'm sorting these by leverage. Okay. I'm getting like 10% of Tyquan Thornton. So there, I am getting some guys. Let me see who else. DJ Moore I talked about. Olave I talked about. And one other guy, then I'll let – I don't want to mention everybody. And then I'll let, I guess, Rohde take it away. I'm also getting a decent amount of Garrett Wilson at 4,200. And I guess that's my pretty much my most of my pool.
I actually kind of like some of those, and I'm going to throw out some real cheapos that are going to be a little bit of head scratchers for people. And I'll explain why I like them. But Rohde, why don't you go first and talk about the guys you like at wide receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I like a lot of those same guys that she just mentioned. The Garrett Wilson call, I do really like. He fits really well at the 4,200 for what I'm finding. Yeah, you know, Chris Olave is going to be pretty chalky at 18-19%, but he's looked really good this year. A pivot off that same 6K range, you know, Ayuk's right there. Kind of going to get some work in that game. Maybe he's a low owned play. I do like Adam Thielen off of Jefferson today a little bit. I don't mind the Ellinger game and then stacking on Michael Pittman. I think maybe he gets the work at only 7%. I got here. So yeah, I'm gonna just kind of take some shots at these lower owned guys and kind of build my lineup. So we don't really have that super cheap running backs today. So it's like, yeah, Kupp's a little bit lower owned. If you can get him in there, you know, he could be a good play. But these guys are expensive, like Jefferson, Kupp, and Adams. You know, but Adams is I like in that game if you can pair him with Kamara. Mm-hmm. Hill's right there. AJ Brown at 7,700. He's going to come in at about 8%. I got some Jalen Hurts stacks I like with him. CeeDee Lamb I like today. What I'm trying to think of guess off the board that Bobby's got here. What would he be off the board on? That Thornton guy for Patriots, maybe. 3,800.
I'm okay with him, but he's not my guy. But I got
He's
you.
not
He's
the
okay.
guy. Dang. I was like really trying to think. Van Jefferson coming back at 3K for the
There's
Rams.
one. There's one of my guys.
All right, we're getting closer.
Who's that?
Van
Van
Jefferson's
Jefferson.
back today.
And I felt better about it after McVay came out and said that on Friday that he's going to get play 90+% of the snaps and essentially be the wide receiver 2 at 3K. I think you now actually have a guy who's capable as the number 2 receiver for the Rams, and we haven't really had that all season. Sorry, go ahead, Sheets. I mean, Rohde.
Yeah, I mean that's a great play. I'm loaded with Van Jefferson and best ball guys. Just I am starting to see my best ball lineups go up, and it's starting to get to my players. The bye weeks and the injuries are really starting to help me out in best ball. And this guy coming back is really going to be a key piece for that. George Pickens a little bit in that game. I like stacking. I do like a run back a little bit. He would be a guy I wouldn't mind with my Hurt stacks. Wan'Dale Robinson at 4,700 in that Seattle Giants game. I like. And Garrett Wilson. Robbie Anderson at 4K is kind of crazy, but in that same Arizona men game, maybe he gets a bomb. I like him. I got a little bit of him. He might even be in a bigger lineup.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
That's kind of the rundown right there. I gave some pretty low on plays there, guys.
Yeah, my 2 cheapies, and again, I wasn't going to use them in my bigger buy-ins, and I've sort of changed my mind on it a little bit. I'm going to play some Van Jefferson, but I'm going to play some Juwan Jennings. I don't really see why we wouldn't be doing this. Okay, so first of all, he's had even when everybody was healthy, he's had a good history against the Rams as it is. With Debo out, I think some people will go to Ayuk. I like both. I'm good with Ayuk, but I actually think Juwan Jennings is the guy I would want to get exposure to there. And I think that you don't have to play both of them in the same lineup or something like that, but I will be mixing around some Jennings and some Jefferson. So those are my two really low end guys who are going to be a couple percent owned probably at most. Other than that, I'm able, because of the way that I'm building and using some of those cheapos to get up to some of these top plays. The one thing that's interesting to me is, so let's just take like a DJ Moore, and then we have, you mentioned Pickens, who I'm totally good with as well. But Deontay Johnson at 5,600, I can't help myself sometimes with guys like this, and it may be a little bit, I don't know, it may be a little bit off, to go that route, but I just think that some of these Pittsburgh guys, I mean, with just the number of targets alone, Deontay Johnson has had 3 out of the 5 games this year has had double-digit targets. They don't always complete all of them. I mean, you got Pickett throwing you the ball, which just sort of led me to a couple Pittsburgh stacks in a game that we like, where they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. He's a guy who could get there on PPR alone. And God forbid he gets a touchdown for you, and all of a sudden Deontay Johnson may be the better play than DJ Moore. And you've got a chalky DJ Moore and an unowned Johnson. So I'm just sort of interested in doing that a little bit. So that's where I'm at with. I do like the Pittsburgh receivers and mixing them around as my cheap guys. I like Mooney. Again, if I'm going to play Mooney, it almost feels like I should play Fields in that lineup. But I think Mooney, against a defense that's been awesome, but in general, you have a corner who's going to cover him who just does like to gamble. And all it takes is one big play from Mooney, and he's definitely a big play guy. So I think Mooney is a reasonable one as well. Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, all these guys completely fine with. I prefer Jefferson for what it's worth. And it just feels weird that you're going to have, what do we have the ownership on Deontay Johnson versus, you have a $300 price difference on Deontay Johnson versus DJ Moore. And you've got one who's going to be 6 times the ownership projected right now as the other guy. Feels kind of weird that we wouldn't take a shot there. And maybe you play him with Olave, or maybe you play him with DJ Moore. But I think Deontay Johnson is a really interesting play today in a game where they're going to have to be throwing coming from behind, most likely. And I think that you're going to see a bunch of targets go his way. If it's not him, it'll be Pickens. And if it's not Pickens, it'll be Claypool. So I will get exposure to all 3 of those guys.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out, just because of that stack again, that Trent Sherfield is a flat 3K for Miami. So if you want to, I think he's going to get let's just put it this way. I think he's going to get more ownership than his projection would indicate, just because that's what people are going to do. They're going to jam like whatever Miami stacks they come up with. And then they'll say, give me, XYZ, Miami guys, but I don't want to have more of XYZ. So I actually think, don't be surprised if Sherfield gets like over 5% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for good reason. You know what I mean? If you play this game and you want to get somewhat different, I think that these are the types of plays you have to make. And he's actually pretty good.
He's got some talent, and he's on the field enough of the time. They will run those 3 wide receiver sets. I don't know what's going on underneath me. The generator or something is all vibrating floor. Thanks, Joanne. It's actually not so bad, but it's just the early morning and it's not eating yet and all that stuff. It just makes it a little bit chilly out here, even by the beach. All right.
Speaking of which, before we get to tight end, another guy from the Detroit game, Khalif Raymond. I know everybody's going to be running stuff back with St. Brown. And I guess some people could go to Hawkinson as well. And I mentioned Josh Reynolds, but don't forget Khalif Raymond is part of your run backs as well.
Yeah, I wish they were just what's funny is if they were a little bit cheaper, of course they would have some ownership too. But I wish they were just a little bit cheaper. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Both he and Reynolds, they feel like they should be a little bit cheaper, I guess is what I'm saying. They're priced for the St. Brown being out almost. And I like that game quite a bit. All right, let's move over to tight end. You got some spend downs here, I think, today for the most part, but I also think that I'm curious where the ownership's going to end up on Hawkinson. I think it's going to be low, and this has pretty much been the nut matchup for tight ends, or one of the nut matchups for tight ends this season. Partly it's been matchup based, but I like that. I think Tyler Higbee is a really solid play. I Noah Fant. I've been waiting for him to come through. I think they're starting to use him now. So I'm the 2,800 I'll take as another value one. I like the Kyle Pitts, the Irv Smith, but I'm playing a little bit of roulette here, like just sort of spinning these guys around, and then I always am going to have some love for Goddard. So those are basically my pool at tight end. Rohde, what are you doing? And then we'll move over to Sheets.
Yeah, Goddard I really like today. I think that's a good game environment for him. Kittle a little bit at 5,700. I mean, we got no Debo, so he should get some work. He's been getting a little bit more work. He looks pretty good. Pat Freiermuth in that game against Philly. It's hard to run him back because I'm playing a lot of Goddard, so I'm more getting Pat in lineups. I don't have Goddard. Higbee's looking like he's going to be super chalk again, which last time he was super chalk, it didn't work out. Kyle Pitts I like with the DJ Moore combo in that Carolina game. It's kind of a run back. Foster Moreau is probably going to come up in ownership. He's got a better projection now. Irv Smith. Schultz, if you want to stack him up a little bit with Dalton, like if you don't want to play Tony Pollard, you go Schultz, CD, Dak in a stack type thing. I do like that. Don't forget about Ertz in that dome game with Arizona. You can stack with Hopkins and Murray, or just even Ertz and Murray type mini stack. Noah Fant I have liked all year. He's finally getting the work. I feel like today's the day I'm getting off him a little bit more, but I like him at 2,800. So yeah, those are pretty much my guys. And then Gesicki, I'm probably going to build a Tua stack, and he's going to be the guy I'm going to put in it.
I like that, and that's a great way to get off the chalk in a game that otherwise is going to be incredibly chalky. Sheets, how about you?
My highest owned tight end by like 1 percentage point is Kyle Pitts, but it's literally I don't have much of anybody. I have like 14% of him, and I just got a whole bunch of tight ends.
Can I ask you a quick question? Is Atlanta your Arizona Diamondbacks of the NFL? You always, I feel like every show we do, and you probably got a good point in it. I mean, they always look like the good game stack because they're bad against the pass and all this stuff. But I noticed that you always are on Atlanta and their opponents every time.
Yeah, and I guess because they play in good weather usually. I guess.
Yeah, the Domes.
I guess, but I have a whole bunch of tight ends, and you literally mentioned all of them. But in case you didn't mention a couple, I'll just throw them in. I have like a good 8% of Juwan Johnson. I don't know if you guys mentioned him, but for Toronto, for New Orleans, you mentioned literally everybody else that I have more than 3% of. So I may as well go over guys I have less than 3% of. So a couple of other just of hoodoos, 2,600 Brevin Jordan. I don't know. Then Hunter Henry at 3,400. You already mentioned Kittle. Tyler, I have like one lineup with Tyler Conklin in it. Cole Kmet in a pretty good game script actually for Chicago. I don't mind that, but everybody else you kind of mentioned. I have no real big stand on anybody.
I gotcha. And for what it's worth, I just want to throw out. I forgot one thing at receiver that I just wanted to throw out. I do like Wendell Robinson today. For what it's worth.
I mentioned him, right? Too?
Did you? Oh, you did? Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
yeah.
Wendell's one of the last guys I said.
Yeah. And Rich B asking if Foreman at running back. Yeah, we touched on that one earlier. I do like the Foreman play at running back. I'm into that a little bit, but I'm not crazy high. Jacoldi, he's always on the Diamondbacks as well. There's something about the projections. I must always love these guys because I don't usually see all of it, but it's so funny. Slick says Algier. I personally am not getting there this week, but I think that you could take shots on any of these other running backs because there's going to be such heavy chalk on the top end guys. All right, let's move quickly to defenses and talk about some plays. I'll start real quick. I don't see anybody as being a particularly amazing standout. You have the Patriots against an offense that's been pretty good. I think that's reasonable. I think the Rams and the Niners both you could argue because both quarterbacks will make big mistakes with the way things are going this season. But the team I'm heaviest on is going to be Arizona, just for the reasons I mentioned. You have an unowned defense in a game that everybody likes. And by the way, I could even use it in part of that game. Like I could play, if I wanted to play a Cousins lineup, I could play an Arizona defense on the other side and hope they score a touchdown in one of those, blitz plays where they don't get the ball out quick enough to Jefferson and somebody rips the route and runs it back or something like that. I don't think you need to get that cute. I'm just throwing things out there. I just could see them getting a lot of pressure on Cousins here. And if they're able to, Cousins will make mistakes. So, but nobody's really standing out as an obvious defense. I guess the number one would be the Cowboys, but I don't really want to pay $4K for a defense when that's what I'm paying for my quarterback. So that's sort of my issue with that one. But the other one for me would be one that I don't think people are going to play very much. It's trying to find out who. Oh yeah, it's Tennessee at 3,600. I think that actually I might prefer Tennessee to. And also I'm playing Henry, so you get a little bit of whatever that is, but they're cheap. I'm sorry, they're expensive, but I think if you're going to pay up, them or the Cowboys certainly make the most sense, just in a vacuum. How about you, Sheets, and then we'll go to Rohde, who hates talking about defenses, but we have to, unfortunately.
Yeah, my top defense kind of by a lot that I had to kind of trim down was Houston. I was getting like 25% of them in my initial builds or whatever. I don't know whether that's in part because they correlate with Pierce, the way that they get scripts and stuff, but they're they're playing the rookie quarterback, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? So they look good. Next one, next high zone I have that some of you didn't mention was actually the Seahawks against Daniel Jones. I have them as my second highest, and the third you mentioned the Patriots, and you already mentioned the Cowboys. I'll give you two others, both in the same game, which is always kind of cool. I like both the Eagles and Pittsburgh. Eagles for obvious reasons, right? They're just going to bring in all kinds of heat against the rookie quarterback, right? As a big favorite. And Pittsburgh. I mean, Jalen Hurts gets in. I've seen him throw pick sixes. I've seen him get a little bit fishy with the ball. And Pittsburgh's opportunistic, so I don't know. Are they minimum cost or not even the 2,400? So I have reasonable 6-7% of them or whatever it is. But for me, I'll just reiterate: Texas, Seahawks, Patriots, Eagles, and Cowboys.
Gotcha. How about you, Rohde?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much the same ones. Eagles grayed out to me the best today. I haven't got as much as the Cowboys, but they're right there at the 4K. Texans, I do have quite a bit of them. 2,600, I do like that. I was getting a little bit more 49ers earlier at 3,100 on DK. I do like your Arizona call on that on the pressure there at 2,500.
I like that. Yeah,
I needed that 100 in a lot of these lineups that
I know,
and you have to go out, and it's like I had either do I grab the Lions or something 20? Where do I go? Bears at 2,400. Some it's like, man, do I just dip down, hope for a pick six, basically? So that's where I'm getting spread out a little bit. If I need a little bit more money, I drop to some of these lower ones. But if I can get the Eagles, that's the ideal defense. And one guy I didn't mention, tight end Granson for the Ellinger play. I didn't mention him as a stack option. He played with Ellinger in college.
There you go.
So there you go.
We love it. That's great. I love that.
$2,700 tight end low owned. I got stacked with my quarterback.
I love it.
Forgot about that one.
No, that's a good one. I like that quite a bit. So I just want to point out one last thing about defenses. It is interesting to me, the lowest projected owned defense, which is less than like 0.5%, is going against a team that has scored 6 points over the past 2 weeks. It's going against a team that's turned the ball over 6 times and given up, I believe, a defensive touchdown in each of those games, and that would be Miami against Detroit. I am playing some of the Detroit today, so don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean that I don't think there's plenty of room for Miami to go nuts. They're a little more expensive, but I just think it's interesting that they're going to become, unowned at 3% is very different than unowned at like 0.5% when you're talking about the millionaire maker. And if you get the best defense out there and they do what they've done the last 2 weeks in Detroit, you're going to be looking pretty good because nobody else in the field is going to have that.
But we should talk about for a minute FanDuel specifically.
Yep.
Just again, I think the best way to do that is just indicate where we're higher on some guys than others. So I'll just kind of start like one guy that, for whatever reason, maybe it's price, maybe it's something else, stands out for me that I have more of on FanDuel than on DraftKings by a decent amount would be Brandon Cooks from Houston. Getting more of him for some reason on FanDuel than on DraftKings. Also getting more Pollard on FanDuel than on DraftKings. I'm getting like 100% FanDuel Pollard on FanDuel. That's the other thing. And then what else on FanDuel am I getting more of? That was the only thing I wanted to mention about FanDuel. And was it defense also? The defense will get more Seattle. That's pretty much it.
Yeah,
I want to interrupt you guys for 1 second. Noah Brown's officially out for Dallas. He's projected for like nine-ish points, fantasy points. So
okay,
some work. So
I appreciate that one because I was trying to keep track of it while we were going, but I didn't notice that. Let me just see real quick. Yeah,
it
would be nice if Gallup was a little bit cheaper, huh?
He is 5K, but yeah, I mean that's not bad play. I don't know, maybe a little cheaper.
I think CD is probably my favorite. Would be my favorite.
Yeah, I got some CD
the most, I guess. But I also really, I mean, I'm playing some Ellinger, so that means I'm going to play some Pittman today, unfortunately. So to answer the San Francisco and the Timothy's question, he said the Niners and Rams, that has never worked out. They don't play high scoring games these days. They really don't. Both defenses are good. Both quarterbacks at the moment are really, really sketchy. I like the idea of getting pieces of those games, but I don't like the idea of full stacking it. The closest I would come to stacking it would be something like I guess it would be like a Kittle and maybe a Jefferson or a Jennings and a Higbee. That's what I would do. I'd go to one tight end or one cheap receiver, and then you could spend up everywhere else. But I don't think I want to fully game stack that. Rich B says, sorry, like what is with Metcalf? Full go or a decoy today? That's a really good question. I don't have the answer, unfortunately. And
oh, really? The coach has not come out and said we're going to be using him as a decoy.
yeah. I don't know what to do. What we think about that. I think Lockett is totally in play either way. So I would say that's probably your. If you feel like he's going to be a decoy, I think you just play Lockett. That's you play Lockett or you play the aforementioned Noah Fant.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else, guys, to touch on before we get out of here? We've done a nice little rundown. I think I had a couple hot takes, and one of them, most of them weren't DFS related. I really like the Bears plus the 10, and I think the Bears are going to be competitive. I don't know if I even like them plus 10. I think that's a game in the third quarter. That's just my early prediction. And I think that they're very live to win that game. I wish they were a little better than plus 360. I thought it'd be like plus 500. That I would probably actually make myself make a bet on because I think they win that game 1 out of 5 or 6 times. I also think the 30-0 is completely possible as well. And I think the Steelers are going to be competitive against the Eagles. I don't know what the final score, you always get those backdoor, maybe they backdoor cover it or maybe the Eagles pull away later. But I still believe that Pittsburgh can do enough. And I just like Pittsburgh higher than a 15-point total against the Eagles. I don't think anybody should have a 15-point projected total against the Eagles, even though as good as they are, you can still score on that team.
Listen, we say this all year. Pittsburgh plays hard every game.
Yep. And And K9's asking a question I just want to answer real quick. You guys tell me your thoughts, because I like Deontay, I think, more than anybody else does. The problem with Deontay on FanDuel versus DraftKings is part of why we love Deontay. First of all, he hasn't scored a touchdown this season, but why we like Deontay is because he gets the share of the work. He gets tons of targets. On FanDuel, that's not really a huge benefit to you. But at the same price, to get off of some chalk, I'm absolutely good with it. I just think it's more of a play on DraftKings for me personally. And any hot takes for you, Sheets, before we get out of here? And what's happening in the Jacksonville game for Brave Jayhawk?
They just stopped Denver. They're down 14-10, 12:50 to go. It's a coin flip.
Oh my God! Hopefully they can pull one of these close games out. They haven't been able to do so far this season. Hopefully,
we'll see. Then again, Denver's done their best to lose too. So,
yep. How about you, Rohde? Any hot takes today? Any guy who you sort of think is you're just finding that you're well over the field on something interesting?
I don't know. I'm starting to wonder about myself today. I'm real chalky on these running backs, man. Like, yeah, obviously Pollard, but man, I'm getting a lot of that Kenneth Walker in that game too. I really got to figure out how to lighten up on that at 6,500. So, yeah, I guess if those guys do well today, I'm going to be doing well. So,
yep. You know what's interesting? The 4:00 games are very, very low. You couldn't know who's going to win. Going into the 4:00 games, there, everybody's gonna be sweating. You know what? I think that Giant game is gonna be the hammer that everybody's watching.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be Indianapolis personally, because I think there's gonna be so and I mean, sorry, Ellinger, not Bellinger. I can't get out of my Dodgers.
Wait a minute. So Ellinger's on Indianapolis, right?
Yep.
What's Washington's defense? What do they cost?
You're totally trying to get targeted. I think they're pretty. I think they're made them more expensive this week because of that.
They probably are, because I'm not barely getting a.
The weird part is, why didn't people it was they'd be a great play against Matt Ryan if he was there. If he was still playing. I don't know why they weren't there. Their defense is they're only 2,600. That probably is a pretty good play, and I think they're going to get some more. My guess is they end up being. I don't know if they're the most popular defense, but I bet you they're right there with the most popular defenses.
Okay.
I think that's a good play though. All right. Goldie doesn't like the look. Goldie, we're pulling for a guy to win $6 million or something. You know what I mean? And he needs Jacksonville to win to really help boost him up there. So it's we can put aside our personal love, but you know what? The Denver's going to have to prove that they're a little bit. I don't know what's going on with that. I still don't understand with that offense why they can't score any points. Anyway, guys, appreciate it. Great to see you guys in Rohde. Good to see you, Sheets, as always. For what it's worth, I will be out tomorrow. I have a family thing to take care of, but I will be good for live. I just won't be there in the morning. So I'm not going to.
I'll record. I got it.
I appreciate that, Ben. All right. Good luck, everybody, and let's make some money today. I'll be in Discord. I'm sure Rohde will be all day. We want to see some screenshots. We want to see some people complaining. We want to see people telling people they shouldn't complain because look, you guys.
I saw something.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I thought I saw someone from Denver do something really good. No, okay, it wasn't that bad. That wasn't that bad.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck to everybody, and good luck to Brave Jayhawk and everybody else out there. Yep. And let's make some money.